Welcome to ACF Chefs Forum. Before we dive into today's webinar, The Chef's Brain Unlocked, Why AI is Transforming Culinary Leadership, we'd like to thank Hormel Food Service for sponsoring this session. You trusted Hormel Food Service with your concerns, and they've listened. Hormel Food Service is innovating using AI and beyond to craft revolutionary product solutions designed to solve real back-of-the-house pain points and give the operations more room for freedom and flavor. For those unfamiliar with the American Culinary Federation, we are the leading organization for culinary professionals, offering education, certification, and community for chefs and food service leaders. If you're not yet a member, today's webinar is a great example of the valuable resources we offer. Today, we'll be joining Chef Tiffany Poe, CEC, for a conversation on the exciting and ever-changing topic of AI. Feel free to ask questions using the Q&A function at any time. Let's get started by sharing where you're tuning in from in the chat. I'm Chris Tanner, ACS Executive Director, and I'm excited to be here with you today. Let's meet today's presenter. Chef Tiffany Poe, CEC, merges innovation, education, and creativity into a distinguished culinary career. She has served as a certified executive chef, hospitality educator, senior corporate chef, and leadership development consultant, earning AI certifications from Vanderbilt University and the Blockchain Council. Her education pedigree includes honors from the Culinary Institute of America, Oklahoma State University, and Le Cordon Bleu, Australia, where she studied neuroeducation and gastronomic tourism. Recognized as a James Beard and IACP scholar, Chef Poe was awarded the American Culinary Federation Presidential Medallion in 2020. With over 2 decades of experience, she has shaped more than 10,000 aspiring chefs, initiated award-winning teams and programs, championed multi-unit, multi-million-dollar facilities, and led numerous national projects and trainings. Now, as a certified master life and professional coach, she empowers professionals from every industry, from the very industry, to blend gastronomic principles with AI, offering innovative structures to navigate the technology landscape. At this time, my friend, I'd love to pass it over to you, Chef.
Thanks, Chef. I appreciate it. It's good to be with you today. I'm excited.
We're happy to have you here.
Well, we've been talking about having this conversation for a long time. And last year at the national convention, we had a lot of fun. We had standing room only in the conversation about AI and prompting and all that fun stuff. So now we've just continued the conversation, right?
Absolutely. As
Absolutely.
we were talking a little bit about AI before that, I'm a little obsessed with it in certain parts. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about what you're going to teach us here too. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, AI kind of found me when I was in a transitional place. I say AI found me. I downloaded ChatGPT onto my phone one day when I was watching a movie with my kids and I was kind of checked out mentally. And I was in a big transition season of my life. And I kept thinking, how smart could this thing be, right? And so I started playing with it. This was like 2022, maybe 21, I don't know. And I haven't stopped. So I felt like I found my new favorite toy and I've just continued to kind of grow with it. So it can be a little obsessive, a little bit addictive, you might say. But today we're going to talk about like specific applications and the chef brain perspective of it. So we're not going to talk about all the controversy or all the negative side of it. It's just like anything, right? In some ways, it's 1998 and the internet just came out. Now it's like, what are you going to do with it, right?
Except we're not going to be all asked at the year 2000, 1999 to leave our building in case the printers don't work.
Right, right. At least we've come a little ways since then. So I'm going to talk about that. And I think it's a great time for all chefs, especially ACF chefs, chefs who want to distinguish themselves in the industry and who want to kind of have an edge in the future of whatever that looks like. Um, AI is a fantastic thing to start adding in incrementally to your daily work, your daily life, and now the certification that we have with the credentialization through ACF. So I'm excited to talk about our course that we're going to be launching very soon, maybe today or tomorrow. So. Very good. All right, I do have a PowerPoint in good chef fashion, if you will. I really wanted to frame it around the chef brain because the more I play with AI and the more that we're seeing it kind of take over different sections of our industry and the more chefs get involved, the more that I see that there's a real specific uniqueness to the way chefs approach AI and the creativity and the ideation around AI that's different from any other industry. And so you mentioned in the introduction, I've been around a little while now, a couple decades, And it's fun because looking at this from a chef's perspective, an educator's perspective, a consulting perspective, kind of a neuroeducation perspective, it becomes pretty fascinating because not all other professions have this unique ability to kind of see things five-dimensionally, right? We're the only profession that engages all five senses and then we taste it at the end, right? You get neurosurgeons and you get pianists and you get a lot of different unique industries that engage four of the senses whenever they're working every day, but we're the only ones that engage all five. So it becomes pretty fun to start thinking about what that looks like when you engage AI. Of course, I'm Tiffany Poe. We've already met. I have a really long background with ACF. I kind of fell in love with the organization when I was a student back in my days at the Culinary Institute. Always epitomized the ACF structure of certification and all of those things, and really have been able to continue that pathway throughout my career. And it's always been such a wonderful way of gauging kind of where I'm at professionally, but also an incredible way to navigate networking and professional development, and of course certification and credentialization, all those things. And so I'm grateful for ACF because it's changed the way that I've seen my career over the years, and it's the reason that I am the chef I am today. So very grateful for ACF and the role it's played in my life. This course was really inspired because you and I had some conversations. You said, "Hey, I want you to present at nationals," and we started just kind of taking the journey. And I didn't realize how hungry, in quotes, chefs were for AI conversations. And so, of course, it's very stimulating, which makes sense, right? But then I started to really work more in what does the chef brain look like as it participates in this journey with AI. And so that's kind of where the conversation starts today. So why AI and why now? If you're watching us today or you're listening to this later on the recording, you have some relationship with AI. You may not be on ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok every single day or every single second on your phone. But if you have a smartphone or a smart device, you've been using AI for quite a while and you may not have even known it. So it does enhance a lot of sectors of our life that we're not even aware of. And it's been around a lot longer than we give it credit for. It's kind of been secretly hiding in the background, if you will, and the coding and the Python coding for decades. But now we have this really cool frontal way to engage in AI, or what I like to call augmented intelligence, because nobody likes artificial stuff, right, Chef? We like good quality flavor. We like the authentic things in our food. We don't like artificial flavors, colors, all that stuff. So I like to use the word augmented. It sounds a little bit better, and it's really more of a true telling of what you're doing with this particular intelligence, right?
I also have a hard time calling it artificial intelligence because it really isn't still at this point. It doesn't have its own brain, doesn't have its own logic. It is augmented because it's only, and you're going to talk about it, I'm sure, but it's only as good as what you put into is what you get out of it. If you ask it to ask one simple question, the artificial intelligence certainly isn't there yet. So
Yeah, that's true. It can't put those brain synapses together that we have as humans. And so it is very augmented until you give it life and you bring it. So you're right, junk in, junk out, or waste in, waste out. And I like to think of it a lot like you and I have been educators in this incredible field. And so we maybe potentially utilize AI in the way that we would utilize an assistant or a student or even a sous chef that we're training. And so you would never tell your sous chef or your apprentice or anybody that you're working with, say, "Hey, here's some food, go make something really amazing." That's kind of very counterproductive to what we're trying to teach them. No, you would give them specific instructions, right? You would say, "I want this, I want that, I want," you'd give them very detailed outline of what you're looking for, and then the result you're going to get back is going to be quite a bit more appetizing and appealing and useful. So same thing with AI. But the future, it's not going away. So if you're sitting there wondering, like, "Oh my gosh, should I get involved? Like, should I learn anything? This seems really intimidating." Now is the time because it's just going to continue to grow. In fact, when I started putting this course together back in, I think it was November or December of 2024, by January, when I was kind of ready to do the first draft of it, there had been like 25 changes to the portals and the platforms that I was using. So I had to go in and update everything. And just this week, I was noticing, "Oh my goodness, I need to update this. I need to change this." So it's evolving every day, and it's also changing every day. And so the more you can kind of jump in and ride the wave, if you will, or get in the canoe and go down the river, you're going to be much further down the track whenever it starts to affect you in your personal life.
well, Chef, the one other thing I'll add on to there too is regulation hasn't come in yet either. So as if you want to start working on getting things out and putting things to work for your brain to move forward, use it while you can and get that access to it because I'm quite sure regulation's coming as well.
Absolutely. We're kind of on this pre-wave. We're in the we're in the generative AI kind of season, if you will, of this growth curve. Everything has an evolution, right? We had the horses, and we had the automobile, and then we had the planes, and so we just keep going further down the track of our journey. Right now, you're right. You're in a very good season to be able to learn it and kind of grab it and digest it before everything gets regulated, and you may not be able to have the same experience as you did if you became certified or accredited or learned something right now. So that's a wonderful point. And it benefits you. There are some negative aspects to it, but I have found that it's 90% really positive and 10% maybe like, okay, wait, what are we doing here? So it's really good. But in the course that we'll be talking about kind of toward the end, I broke this down as if you had your own sous chef. Okay, we can relate to that in the culinary world, right? And so everything that I talk about in the course and that we are talking about when we teach this as a modality, we're talking about, how can I put this to use in my everyday life, right? If it's just a fun toy that we couldn't do anything with, or one of those silly little plastic things that, oh, this might help you peel garlic. Well, I have a chef knife for that, right? We want this to be very useful and very practical. So I use the portal or the mode of ChatGPT, the original, the OG, if you will. And the reason I do is it just has the most multimodal aspects to it. It's the one that is kind of evolving the fastest. There's over 200 million users at this point. And it's also what I find to be kind of the most effective in the chef world. There's other options out there. We talk about this in the course. There's Gemini, there's Grok, there's all kinds of, you may have Copilot on your PC, you may have another product that's out there, and they all have their different purposes. I've just stuck with ChatGPT over the last couple of years because I found that it gets me where I want to go the fastest, if you will. And so ChatGPT itself is a portal. If you may not know, it's something you can download on your phone in an app version. I go back and forth between the desktop version and the app version. And of course, this is just very elementary information. You may already know this, but for those of you who are like, I know nothing about AI, welcome to the conversation, right? I started with the download on my phone because I found that I was running around all day, like most chefs are, getting things going and working. And then by the time I sat down at my computer to actually execute something, I was in a different kind of mindset, kind of a production mode, if you will. So I talked to the portal or the voice activated component of my GPT probably about 100 times a day. I download thoughts that I have constant, ideation like most chefs do. And up until I downloaded the Chat GPT, I didn't really have anything that could keep up with all the different ideas I had at once. In fact, I probably spent about 25 hours the first time that I downloaded it, just getting things off my mental desktop and getting excited about, the things I could produce and create later on when I had a chance to sit down and actually function with it. So in the functionality world, ChatGPT, think of it as like your executive assistant, your planning, your prep, your communication, ideas that come to you in the middle of the night sometimes. Get those off your desktop and start those chats within that particular portal. Now, ChatGPT also has another division of its system, if you will, kind of like your food stylist or your creative, whimsical pastry chef that can do these beautiful visualizations. I spent a little bit of time in my background in the food media and food consulting area where I did a lot of work with Food Network. And for us to go from like concept of like the idea of the recipe itself, where we shot, prep, styled, and staged it. We set it up in front of a camera. We bought the food. We did everything to get that final beauty shot picture. Sometimes took days and sometimes up to like $10,000 to get one shot, right? You can use the ability of prompting and your creative ability, knowledge around, photography and things like that to now prompt some program like Dolly or even like Midjourney, or I like to use AI, Imagine AI. That's one of my favorites. And you can get that same type of product with just using your words. So it's pretty amazing. We'll talk more about that later. And then the last one, and I find this one to be the most effective in our industry, especially if you have a lot of projecting and problem solving and like critical thinking that you have to do as an executive chef or as a corporate chef or anything like that. The data tools now that are within the AI world that you have at your fingertips are mesmerizing. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but those are just kind of the three ways that I use it. So you can kind of see the three different modalities here. I have my own personal stylist, I have my own personal data, Lois Lane, if you will, and then I have my own personal robot that I kind of use on a daily basis. Now, when you're talking about real case scenarios, if you're just downloading this today and you're like, well, what can I do with this, Chef Poe? Well, you can start with, you probably have an arsenal as a chef of all these different amazing files that you've been collecting. It could be PDFs, it could be Word documents. You may have an entire portal of things. You have access to those on a regular basis, right? And so you can now upload those and transverse back and forth and have AI create new ideas and new synthesizing for your menus, your recipes, and it'll create those from documents that you already have. Or you can go from scratch and just give it some ideas and start to ideate within that. Where this really gets fun is when later you start to develop your own custom GPTs. And some of you may be like, what is that? We'll teach you in the course, of course, what that looks and feels like. Some of you may already be creating those and creating your own customization for things that you're producing. Of course, there's the plating design, the social media aspect of it. We all like to show off our food. One of my favorite things to do is take some of my favorite ACF chefs and upload their picture, that they've shared on social media. And I'll ask my custom GPT or just chat GPT, hey, break this down into like, what's going on with this plate? Like what's happening here? And it usually gets pretty accurate. It's kind of funny. You can actually extract from a picture recipes, instructions, ingredient, inventory list, prep guides, all that stuff. Of course, you have to check it. You don't want to just farm your brain out to AI, but it does give you a little bit more of a runway to start that creative process without you having to do all the tic-tac, manual labor that we've had to do in the past. And of course, you can also use it for more advanced things like, forecasting your waste or reducing labor and all those different things. We talk about all those different scenarios within the course, but the world is pretty much your oyster once you know how to use this particular technology. It's pretty exciting. So when I talk about the chef brain, I started to realize after working with AI for a couple months and getting into like the year mark, I'm like, man, this is like really like engaging. Like I feel like my brain has kind of woke up a little bit. It's kind of been activated from COVID and from kind of being asleep. We all thrive in that kind of five-dimensional excitement in our industry. And chefs, if you're anything like me, your brain never turns off. Like I have to kind of turn the off button and like force myself to go into deactivation mode because I've always got an idea. I've always got something that's kind of brewing on the inside, whether it be food or whether it be something else I need to do in my life. I'm just always kind of in that constant creative cycle. And sometimes it can be a little draining and then sometimes it can be rejuvenating. But either way, when you start to really find a way to put all that to use, it becomes even more meaningful. You go to a new depth of a new understanding of like, man, I could really be more effective in every area of my life. And so a lot of the clients I work with say, my goodness, this has started to save me so much time and so much mental equity that I can't go back to the way I used to work. And so when I talk about like the 5D brain map, chefs, of course, are mental. We never turn our brain off. The physical aspect we have to execute. We bring emotion to the table because we're dealing with something that changes people's lives on a daily basis. We're feeding them. We're creating some of the most amazing experiences they have on a daily basis. And then, of course, there's the spatial side. So the fun with AI is that it brings all of those together where you can go from concept to the final product in so much of a faster format. It's exciting. Now, in the course, we do talk about custom GPTs. If you went on to ChatGPT right now, and even without the paid version of it, you could Google in and you could look up my name, just type in search Tiffany Poe, and it would come up with about 20 custom GPTs that you could start using for fun. Now, what we mean by custom is a regular GPT or the regular, Chat GPT, if you will, this big large language model, this generative AI that we're working with, it is pulling from like gobs and gobs and gobs, like swaths of huge data sets of information. And so if you've ever typed something in and got something really funky out, you're probably going like, what the what? Like, what's the deal here? Why am I getting this really funky, weird thing? That's nothing that a chef would actually do. Well, you kind of have to hone it in, right? Just like you wouldn't go to Google and just type in the word recipe. You wouldn't go to ChatGPT and just type in the word like, hey, make me a chicken dish, right? You want to get really kind of honed in and really specific. And so I've designed a lot of these custom GPTs for chefs to use complimentary. Some of them are based on very classic principles like Escoffier, where I have a GPT that has the two digital versions of both of his master books, the guide and then the Escoffier book itself. And anything that you type into that GPT is going to cross-reference it to those two books. So you can say, hey, take this favorite chicken dish that we have on our menu, whatever it is, and crosswalk it and create a beautiful classic dish that mirrors what maybe Escoffier would have done himself. And it will access those memory banks that are uploaded to the GPT, and it will give you something that's really honed in and customized for that particular recipe, which is really kind of exciting. You can also do the same thing with your training or your onboarding. You can really like dial this in to the nth degree. And so if you're spending a lot of time on any of those areas, you can kind of load some of your heavy lifting to these GPTs and let them work for you. Of course, we have the course broken down into 3 different parts. If you've never done anything with AI before, you can get started and go from zero to hero pretty quick. We call that our foundation section. And it's a little different than I think what ACF has offered in the past. We have a lot of these amazing online courses for or certifications or certificates for the membership. This one is an online class, and then you can get up to 3 badges or 3 certificates, and they're separate. So you just kind of keep going down the yellow brick road to keep getting more and more and more advanced. But you can always stop at the foundations, or you can stop at the integrations aspect where you're putting it in your operations. You don't have to go to the advanced, but I find that most people that have tried the course out are like, no, I want all of it. I want all 3 certificates and badges to put beside my name. So that's kind of how the course is laid out. Just like our classical culinary education is, first we learn the mother sauces, first we learn, how to chop and prep and soup sauces and stocks. This is kind of set up in the same format where we start small and then we build to something really big. And the cool part is this course is really designed around, it's 6 modules. For everything from prompting that we build up to leadership skills, but everything we create in the course is meant to be functional and useful in your everyday life, whether you're a culinary student, whether you're an executive chef leading a multi-unit operation, or you're in country clubs or catering or whatever aspect you're in. We even have some stuff for school nutrition professionals. You're building actual components of your portfolio or your file that you can use and put to use in your everyday life. So everything kind of builds upon each other. It's not just let's create for the sake of creating, or let's just have some fun. No, every single assignment, every single thing that we create is meant to be a positive implement functional tool in your organization. And then at the end, we build up our own custom GPTs. We have GPTs that we share back and forth with each other. Maybe you're in a specific niche of the industry where you're a private chef or a personal chef and you're working. There may be custom GPTs that are more beneficial to you. We have a discussion board, and we have a Facebook group that allows us to kind of share and care, where we can all have those different conversations. And then, like I mentioned before, it does result in your own ACF certificate and digital badge. So a lot going on here. Who's it for? It's for executive chefs, educator students, entrepreneurial chefs, consultants, team leaders. Maybe you're somewhere in the brigade working your way up. School nutrition professionals. I do a lot of specific training with school nutrition folks. And so we included some really cool bonus chapters at the end for that. It's also if you're pursuing your certification. Maybe you feel kind of overwhelmed by the behemoth of things that you need to get done. In the course, we talk about how you can crosswalk what you know and where you're at with where you need to go and create a customized training plan for your next certification with ACF. And of course, for students, it's really great. Students are already using this, as you all may understand, or you may, my teenagers are constantly teaching me things on technology. But for educators, it's a way for you to wrap your brain around how you need to stay ahead of the game when it comes to students, because they're going to be using AI whether you allow them or not. I've talked to some culinary educators who are like, we don't allow it. We don't allow it. I said, well, that's a grave mistake, right? Because you need to reverse engineer how to use it and teach students how to be smart with it rather than, completely annihilating it from their learning cycle, because they're going to be using it anyway, whether you give them permission or not. And so just a real quick overview for members, it's $195. That includes the online course. It includes all 3 of the certificates and badges if you go that far. And then for non-members, it's $249. And of course, we'll be talking about this at the national conference. I'll be doing a specialty educator summit as well. If you haven't signed up for the conference, definitely get going with that. And then online, I do a lot of chef brain discussions because it's really fun to think about how our brain works as a chef. Some of you are like, you don't want to be in my brain. That may be very true. But if we were to dissect it from like a neuroeducation perspective, I think you would find it to be quite fascinating, because chefs are one of the only professions that I've ever come across that can walk into a room, and I mean any room. It can be a non-culinary space, and within 30 seconds to a minute, they can detail out in their brain every possible scenario of things that are happening around them and every possible like improvement plan or problem-solving scenario that room would have in it. And I'm right. Like if you're listening to this, you're thinking, yeah, I do that. I do that without even thinking, right? That's the chef brain I'm talking about. And it's really powerful because I think it's probably one of the most under like utilized gifts in our society. And so one of my real passions is kind of bringing that chef brain into other sectors of our world to solve problems that may not be solved in that five-dimensional way. And of course, we have a lot of live collaborations, Facebook, we can be on the chef's table as well. And you can find me at tiffanypoe.com, and there's my email as well. So I don't want to take the whole time up of our webinar just talking about the course and everything, but because I want to conversation with you, Chef. So I'll open it up for questions and kind of let it go wherever you want it to go.
Oh, yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing you at the conference again. Always love when so we talked about our chance encounter, how we first met, and all the people that we end up having through our careers, and with Chef Dan Fallacy, who I just saw over this past week at the NRA show, and it's interesting how small and how large our smaller circles can be. And I think AI, interestingly, I think kind of shrinks those circles a little bit more because you get to be able to have so much more interaction with the world because of all the input that's happened. And some of that is positive and some of that's negative, as you mentioned. So let's
Right.
talk about that controversy that's behind there. So, what's the biggest criticism you've heard from people about using AI?
Well, there's usually two that come up first. One is, oh my goodness, it's going to replace us. Like you're just farming out, our brain to the robots, which is funny, not funny. Like if you watched iRobot, it's not funny, right? Like you could totally see that kind of playing out, especially with all the humanoids and all the cool technology that's coming out. And I said, yes, but there's horrible things on the internet, and that doesn't keep you from using Google. So let's quit being, kind of that self-righteous conversation because it's a tool and it's what you do with it. It's not the physi or the psychological and let's not get into the philosophical side of it, right? Because I said it won't replace humans until humans stop participating, right? And so that's the number one thing I would tell chefs is no, it's not here to replace you. It's actually here to enhance you. In fact, I can see in the future having AI training and understanding will be a prerequisite on a job description for a chef. And that we're not too far away from that as we speak. There's a couple chefs that are doing really cool stuff. I know Rich Rosendale has a really cool series of online classes as well, and he and I have talked on multiple occasions about, what does the future look like? And I don't think it's intimidating. I think it's the chance to jump on. It's kind of like when molecular gastronomy started coming out and everybody really started like, "Oh my gosh, it's so cool and yet I don't know what it is and I don't understand." And now we've demystified it to the degree that every chef has to know at least one or two elements of molecular gastronomy practices to be even relevant. And so that's kind of how AI is. You need to at least have a basic foundational understanding of the conversation to be able to be in the conversation. So I can see a world where in the future that base knowledge will be on every job description. It'll be like Microsoft Office. Do you know Word, PowerPoint, and Excel? Do you understand how GPTs are and what those mean? And can you craft custom GPTs? And it's not a real hard skill to learn. You just have to like jump in and get the information, right?
Yeah,
So I think that's the first
particularly
one.
with all the investment you're seeing, all these different companies in different countries even putting into it, or even the little that some of them are going into and finding how easy it is for someone to develop some of these tools,
Hmm.
but none of them are foolproof, right? So, and you and I
Right.
talked about so I use Chat GPT to do my macros for my weight training, and
Hmm.
I'll put it in once and it looks great. And I'll go back to it like I said 325 grams of protein, and somehow this says 725 now. That is a lot of food for me to eat. So you do have to be, and as you said earlier, garbage in, garbage out. It's only as good as the information you put into it and
Hmm.
what you're going to get out of it, and also verifying it as well, because it's not a robot, it's not AI. It's just a conglomeration of information that comes from a large amount of areas. And that's why I think it's important, again, before we get in regulation, learn how to use it before a regulation comes in, because you're going to be I think, a lot more powerful in using the tool before that happens.
Right, but never before have we had access to coding. Like, but if you wanted to be a coder, you had to go to learn Python, JavaScript, one of those coding languages. What ChatGPT and the generative AI portals that we have access to, whether it be Claude or Gemini or Copilot or any of those brands of generative AI, what that gives us is you're literally creating code with your normal English language. And that's what it is. In fact, you can ask for the code, you can
Yeah.
ask for the Python code for anything that you create
There's,
on GPT.
there's people coding fully in AI now.
Yeah,
So it's amazing.
it really is.
Let's keep it on culinary and hospitality though. So I got
Right, right.
Travis Smith. Hello, Travis. Good to see you, Chef. He's got a question for you. Can you give a high level overview of how AI helps with inventory?
Ooh, very good. So let's say you're operating mostly with, Excel spreadsheets potentially, which is the normal MO of inventory management, unless you have a very, specific software that you're using. It just kind of depends on what your operation looks like. Being able to cross-reference, I've in a couple of my clients, we've set up coding systems to where we have either QR codes or RFID codes, and those are very easy. You can like buy those on, Amazon, and you can create a QR code on, Canva. And we use those to cross-reference, especially like for really expensive items, like maybe big large pieces of protein or caviar or things like that you may not see going in and out of your storeroom, or maybe you don't have a procurement agent. You can upload to AI and start crosswalking those and creating, let's say you're trying to figure out like where did this particular thing go, or why am I seeing these trends in my inventory? Why did that change up? You can crosswalk those spreadsheets or even those questions, and it will problem solve for you as if you took the time to go walk around and find it all yourself. Now, sometimes you have to use your smartphone, like most smartphones are activated with QR code recognition, and you can use that then to track some of your inventory, and you can actually assign your team members, some younger kids on your team, that are your sous chefs or your line cooks or even your inventory managers. You can assign them ways of tracking as well. So it all becomes like we all have the technology in our fingertips, right? You can start using those to crosswalk. And at first it seems complicated, but then you're like, wait a minute, that's I already have the Excel spreadsheets. I already have like all the information. You can use AI to get to that problem solution by asking it to quantify this information that you have to digest. Maybe it took you 3 hours to sort through it yourself. You could upload it to AI and draw out those specific questions that you want it to solve or that you want to ask it for. And you can even upload like product identification, like almost everything we buy in the commercial world, has some kind of a barcode, or you have some kind of an identification on there. Back in the old days, we used to flip out the yield, the book of yields, or we'd flip out the old meat guides, right? Or the seafood guides.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I use it again back to my weightlifting macro factors, is what a brand app I use to track my
Mhm.
calories and my macros and everything. And there's a lot of times. So if you've ever used my Fitness Pal, and this is the same thing that you use for AI tools now, not just using it as a reference point.
Right,
You used to have all the commercial foods and all those different items. So you just type in there what, I happen to be eating this builder's bar, and it has, what I had to put, either it had to be in there already or I had to manually put it in.
right.
Now, all I have to do is scan the back of the label. And if it wasn't
Hmm.
in there, it puts it in automatically and it figures everything out. So the AI tools are actually being built into some of those other tools as well. And that's where I see it in the inventory tool. It's able to just scan everything on the back of it and be able to build it. And interesting enough, that thing is going to help out with nutrition too for menus. So as restaurants in many states have to put in their, chain restaurants nationwide have to put their nutrition labeling onto their menus. I think you're going to eventually start seeing that in other places. I think the AI tool will help out a lot too.
Absolutely. And by using it kind of on your personal level, it allows you to understand that if you need to plug in those APIs, which is like the coding, it's like having a plug-in, like you buy it for your lamp or something, you plug into electricity. These softwares that we've all been using as chefs over the years, they have that coding already sitting there. You can have your customization of what you're doing personally, and you can have the company plug that into your personal, analysis tool, and then all of a sudden you have access to all that within your own personal computer. And what you talked about earlier about being deregulated, now's the time to kind of learn it, because later it's going to get a lot more like kind of like when we accredited everything, like we standardized it, right? So it wasn't meant to be a bad thing, but there's a difference, right? There's a difference between kind of being in on the ground floor and being when it's all calculated.
I've got an anonymous question from a student. I know why it's anonymous because it's a student that doesn't want the instructor to know that you're asking these questions.
That's
So, but
funny.
this is a very general one, so you could have put your name on it, would have been okay. As a student, what are the key points to include an application for scholarships, financial aid to find AI to use for AI education use? For funding, I guess that would be the question.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, back in the day we had to go look up all the sources, right? So
Yeah.
now because GPT or ChatGPT is plugged into the World Wide Web, you can have it go out and do a query. In fact, now we're moving into the what we call agentic AI, where you're creating your own agents to go work for you. And some companies have already been doing this for a long time. It's just now readily available to the consumer, like us. So you can actually go in and say, okay, create for me a list of all the potential culinary focused or hospitality student focused scholarships that are available right now in the industry. Give me the deadlines, give me what the criteria are that they're looking for, and put this all in a chart or a table for me to look at, including the addresses or the websites in which I need to go apply for them. Go.
And then you can have it write the letter for you.
Yeah, and then you can have it turn around and write the letter. Now you want to make sure that it's, it doesn't use the word like delve. I think that's the funniest word. Every time I see the word delve into something, I know it's AI because that's its like one of its favorite words.
Whenever I see at the end of an email, if I see the word best regards, because I don't use those words, so I've seen that best regards is one, and then when you see, I don't remember what the English like, so it's the hyphen that goes between. It's a no one. I've never seen anyone use that typing language, but it puts it into people's emails. Like you did not write that.
Yeah, you did not. But then you go one step further, and that's where the chef brain comes in. It's like, wait a minute, how would I do this if I really wanted to be over the top? Like, how can I make this more epic? And so let's say you got your list of scholarships, you've got all that, you got all the criteria. Ask it the next question and say, you know what, I really want to stand out with my application. What do I need to do, or what do I need to craft into my essay, my application to stand out? And it will give you feedback, and it will even coach you on how to be a better scholarship applicant based upon, you know, large language models of successful applications out there. So take it to that next level. Like, think, how can I go even further? Like, how would I even challenge it more? I like to use the word more epic. I use that in the program. I'm like, how can we make this more epic? That's the way to do it. Say, wait, how can I make sure that I'm one of the top candidates? What do I need to do for that?
I can always leave it to Stephanie. By the way, Stephanie reminded me it's called the M dash.
Oh, the in dash. There you go.
All right, next question. And oh, another one dumped in. With the information we input, are we training it so others can find out what we do? It's an interesting question. You and I were talking about don't put your financial information into AI.
Right. It's like the internet. You wouldn't be like, "Hi, my name is Tiffany. I live here. Come see me." Like that's kind of creepy, right? The same thing applies to AI. Don't be sharing like personal information and details. Now, with that being said, I have a whole section in the course that talks about your POV. So in food media and like when you're a talent on Food Network, your point of view or your POV is everything, right? It determines what kind of merchandise you can sell. It determines what kind of recipes you make. Every chef needs to have a POV. And so on that personal level, you want to train it or train the portal that you're logged into, whatever it is, ChatGPT, whatever. It has a memory set, like so much bandwidth that's allocated to just you. You want to train it to be thinking like you, or you want to create your own custom GPT. With that being said, you want it to be a little bit generic where it's not personally like you wouldn't share your social security number online. Don't do that with the chat GPT as well. Now for some organizations, like I work with a lot of school systems and sometimes government, contract type things, what we do is we unplug the back end where we don't share, kind of like a lamp, like, or your computer when there's a storm, you don't want there to be a surge coming the other way. There's a way inside, and I show you how to do this, to unplug the GPT from sharing information back into its database system. It's still sharing with you, but it doesn't share your information back into that portal. Otherwise, it does. You're kind of co-creating with this kind of like avatar, Neuralink thing that you're sharing with everybody who's using ChatGPT. If you don't want to do that, you just unplug the back, but definitely don't share personal information.
All right, next one. How do you see AI being integrated into culinary education to better prepare students for today's industry? As you might expect in a college environment, there are a wide range of opinions about AI, from excitement to skepticism.
That's a great one. Being a classroom active educator for over 20 years in every format you can think of, incarcerated, I taught in prison for 8 years, career tech, junior college, private college, university. I wish I had had AI in all of those. And here's the reason why. It would have allowed me to teach critical thought process and critical thinking and problem solving in a very tangible, functional way. And here's what I mean by it. I think it's the best thing that's ever happened to culinary educators because now it's forcing you to reverse engineer how you teach to match your students' generational needs, if you will. So Gen Z or Alpha generation that we're coming into now, they have very different ways of thinking, as you would expect, right? As if some of you have children that are these ages, they reverse engineer everything and they have to know why before they'll do the what sometimes. So what AI allows us to do is it forces us to, if you're going to do it properly, like you can just farm it out and get something really stupid, but then you're going to know and you're going to get a bad grade. What if you properly use AI and reverse engineer it, you get to the solution first, but then you have to backtrack and show kind of like your math problem. How did you get to the solution? And that causes you to kind of walk backwards. And what happens, kind of like a flipped classroom, that was so popular like 10 years ago, where you do all your work before you come into the classroom, and then in the classroom you have to like perform and actually like share everything that you learned ahead of time, right? You kind of brought all the information in with you. AI does that for us as well. So it forces us as educators to reverse engineer, making it where we teach the problem solving, we teach the communication, we teach the kind of the abstract ways of learning, and then we turn the students into the teachers, which is the highest form of absorption. So I think it's a good thing. You have to kind of flip it on its head and like reverse it a little bit.
You're getting so many questions, Chef. This is definitely a hot topic for us.
That's good. Well, let's keep going.
Here's a question from our friend Dan Fallacy.
Hey,
Uh,
Dan.
can Chef Poe share how AI could benefit a beginner, non-managerial culinarian and leverage these tools to get better results to impress their chef?
Oh, that's so good. Yes, if you're like, I have no AI experience, and that can go on both spectrums. Maybe you're in a generation where you're like, I hate tech and I can't wait to retire. Like it can go both ways, right? But he's referring to like somebody who's brand new. You want to start creating, and even the free version of a lot of these models allow you to do this kind of memory complex conversation. First, by starting like, here's where I am. Tell the story. Your life is a story. Start telling the AI the story of where you're at. So you start downloading what it is you want to achieve and the goal of impressing the chef, right? Here's where I am. Here's my skill. Here's my knowledge level. Here's what I've done. Here's what I haven't done. You're kind of giving it all this information. Create for me a 30-day plan where I can go from zero to hero and start to incrementally impress or get better results. Maybe you're not just trying to impress, you're actually trying to grow your skill level. Create for me a 30-day plan that I can actually implement slowly and help bring myself to this next level. Or maybe you upload the PDF of like certified sous chef, right? Maybe that's your goal. You all have the PDFs on the ACF website that gives all the criteria for that. Maybe you download that from the ACF website, upload that to your search screen, and say, "Hey, I'm a sous chef, or I'm a new line cook in this particular restaurant." Give the name of the restaurant and the website. Can you create for me a 30-day plan? My goal is to be a certified sous chef in the next 6 months. How do I get there? And it will then generate for you, and you can ask it to communicate with you in your learning style. That's the fun part about ChatGPT. There's so many different multimodals. I'm a bullet point kind of girl. I also like a lot of tables. Some people just like text. I'm also a picture girl. I like a lot of visualization, a lot of infographics. You can say, create for me a 30-day plan, but then say, okay, now turn this into a table with check marks where I can print it out and check off every single day. Or I want you to create for me a portfolio where there's actual places in there for me to add in my pictures. And then what does that look like visually? Does that look like me doing this? So you can start to really have a lot of fun with it, but turn it into your own personal educational consultant is what I like to recommend. It's a
Really
lot of
funny
fun.
to say that because people, we often talk about a 3 or 5 year vision plan, not just for our work, but also for ourselves. And
Right.
one of the prompts I saw one time was, looking through Pinterest or one of those things I was looking through, it said, type into ChatGPT where you want to see yourself in 5 years. Be very granular and detailed where you want to be with your life. Do you want to be married? Do you want to have kids? Do you want to, where do you want to be working? Where do you want to have for income? And then write all these like granular details out, like paragraph, put 2, 3 paragraphs of where you want to be, and then
Mhm.
ask it, how do I get there? And it's very interesting. Obviously, a lot of it's subjective and it's kind of like this affluential thing.
Right.
But as you want to build a plan for yourself, I think the same thing for your career goes. I think you're hitting the nail right in the head, and it's really wild some of the stuff on there. And I didn't want to believe it at first, but I did the exact same thing for somebody. As you know, I do strongman competitions, and I put in there I want to win these certain competitions, and it knows, and I put the events in there and everything. What do I need to get to that point? Now I have a coach, and I give him some of this. I give him a lot more leeway from his 30 years of experience doing what I'm doing, but. Um,
Right.
really cool to be able to use that tool for that.
Absolutely. It's like having very expensive consultants and personal executive assistants at your fingertips. And it's just like, how may I serve you? It's quite amazing.
All right, we got a few more questions here. We got a bit more time. So, do you think the use of AI for things like flavor pairings will put a damper on the future of culinary creativity?
No, and here's why. I think that it will enhance it. Okay, if you ever have, and I know you have, Chef, because you've dealt in the world of flavor and you've been in those R&D worlds, and that's a fairly new like aspect to our industry. That wasn't always around, right? That kind of came about in the 90s and then got a lot more popular in the 2000s, and then now it's like an entire sector of our industry, RCA or RC, the research chef side to be able to hone in on that. There is a humanoid perspective or a human capacity that you have to engage and really dial in to be able to understand the nuances of that experience as humans, right? We're not just creating flavors for some robot to digest or just to farm out for fun. You're actually experiencing the reason you create the flavors is for the human experience. And so until we give robots souls, which is never happening, we will not be replaced by that type. It will just enhance it. Like, for instance, if you want to become a sommelier, you buy the 400, uh, flavor smell kit, from Amazon, from one of those and you dial in. Like you have to get more advanced. So in some ways, I think it's good because we can always create those chemical, synthesations like perfume and those chemical flavors. But to be able to understand what's happening like on the experiential level, that requires a human.
Yeah, so I will tell you just from my as you hinted on from my research, my R&D background, food science background, olfactory senses are extremely, if not still almost, you cannot duplicate them. So they actually have machines, they're olfactory machines that they use at some of these flavor and fragrance companies, and
Right.
they do not work well. Uh,
No.
they're exorbitantly expensive. It still takes the human touch. Because we used them for a lot of the stuff when I worked with my past companies with Campbell Soup Company and Griffith and Rubik's. We'd go to the flavor companies and they said, "Oh, this is going to match." No, it just doesn't. You still need the human at the end of the day. And even with we talk about the robots and whatnot. And I saw being at the RCA the NRA show for the last few days.
Mhm.
You have these robots that are out there. People's like, "Oh, they're going to replace us in different aspects." Unfortunately, COVID changes the way the industry is, and we're short-staffed in certain areas. So, do we need chefs to put down fries down into the fryer? Probably not. Just like we don't need someone to push a button on the elevator anymore.
Right.
But you still need the chef to program that robot in order to do it properly. AI is not going to be able to do a lot of that stuff. It may learn along the way, but I still think there's a lot. I know there's a lot of human elements, so I definitely agree with you on that.
Right.
Now we got a question from Chef Alon Costa. Good to see your name on there, Chef. Where can I watch and experience a video demo regarding the program Chef Poe is offering? Well, you're seeing some of the intro here, but I'm sure as Chef's going to be at the national convention, we'll get to see some of that. And we aren't recording. We aren't recording at the convention yet this year, but we're looking into next year for 2026 when we go to Grand Rapids, Michigan, doing more recording. But I think there might be some other opportunities. Chef, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, if you're taking the course, you'll get access, of course, to all the content, all the information, everything. I'm thinking about doing some Facebook Lives and maybe even some. I'm not sure if we can go live on the Chef's Table on the ACF website, but if we can, I think one of the funnest things to do as a community is to co-create and collaborate, right? If we all were in a kitchen together right now, like rather than on this, technology device, we would be like sharing and, oh my gosh, taste this, and like, hey, how did you do that, chef? And like, oh, tell me more. This AI world allows us to have those same conversations. They just feel slightly different, right? So I'm hoping to offer some more like live content courses and some collaborations. If you take the class, you will get access to those communities, and so you can be a part of that. But I don't know. Maybe we'll have to get creative and come up with some ways to have some fun with this, especially for those chefs that are really excited about it.
Right, another question from Chef Alon. Can AI be misleading regarding a candidate's application?
Oh yeah. Just like anything. I mean, like you have to
We're gonna
really.
prove this at the end of the day, though, right?
Yeah, well, and it's just like you have a discernment factor as a human, right? And we have it with flavor. Like you and I can taste something, or any chef on the webinar can taste, and we can identify a synthetic sugar or an artificial sugar or an artificial flavor agent in anything that we taste, right? Because we've tuned our palates to that. You have to get like that with AI, regardless if you become like a user of AI, you need to become discerning on what is AI. You'll see that on social media. I can immediately tell that's AI, that's AI. And people go, "Oh, how do you know?" I said, "Well, there's subtle nuances, but my gut tells me, right? My gut, my intuition tells me that it's off." And so anytime I get something that's whether it's a application, whether it's a piece of material that I need to sort through, I start to pick up on like little things, right? And you have to use some different senses, but we're good at that at Chef. So I think it is a detriment in some ways. You kind of have to do a little bit more proof in the pudding kind of scenario, but it gets back to like the old-fashioned stuff. Some of those things are coming back now with the use of AI, where we're going back to the basics. Maybe you have that chef or that applicant do something additional, or you query them a little bit more in person. You can tell a lot by looking into somebody's eyes, right? So those old-fashioned aspects of the human experience are coming back because we have ways to kind of be phony on the front end. So that would be my 2 cents is you can figure it out pretty quick if you start looking at the little details.
All right, next, I'm going to ask these two together. This is from Chef Molina. Should we worry about recipe ethics? And what would you say when people ask, where did you get that recipe from?
Yeah, we talk about this in the course. We talk about ethics and we talk about like the code, if you will, like a system of what is appropriate and kind of what is AI etiquette. Anytime that you develop or create something using AI, you should always give credit to where it was created, even if you were the author and the creator of that, right? So when it comes to recipes,
I think that has nothing to do with AI. I think in general you should because it's just a etiquette in ethics. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
no, that's 100% accurate, right? We would never take a recipe out of a famous chef's book and try to pawn it off on Facebook as our own. That would be unethical as our profession. Now, there are people who will do that, but we're talking about the professional standard of an ACF chef, right? Or as a professional chef.
Well, in the
Same thing with AI. The what? The code, the culinarian's code. Absolutely. So it's integrity, it's ethics, that's all those wonderful things that we value as professionals. But when it comes to AI, you want to definitely mark it. You want to say that this is AI generated. Facebook now makes you do that, and I think that's really smart. The other thing is when you come up with a recipe, it's nice to say it's inspired by. Like you can change one recipe ingredient, and the copyright is no longer valid for that particular recipe. But it's always nice to say that, hey, this dish was inspired by this chef, he did it this way or she did it this way, or this was inspired by my things, but it was generated by AI. And so I'm still the author, but it was a partnership of creation on AI. So it's always nice to say that, even though the AI police are not going to come get you. It's just an ethical standard that you know the difference between, shoddy work and professional work. Same thing applies here.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's always going to be people that are out there that are going to steal recipes from other people, photos from other people, and you can't police that. And even more so with AI, it's just going to not empower them more, but just give them another tool to do that. So it's very difficult. I agree with Chef, but also not something you gotta rely on people's ethics at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
All right, one last question. How long have you been working with AI, and how fast have you seen it progress in that period of time?
Ooh, that's a good question. I started playing with it. I want to say it was like the end of 2021, the early part of 2022. I was real inquisitive about it, but I didn't download it onto my phone until I was kind of, I was needing something. COVID had just kind of taken part. I had kind of stepped back from my role as a senior corporate chef. And to be honest, I was mentally very like I was I was mentally asleep, professionally speaking. You know how it is when you're used to being engaged and then maybe you detox from the culture, or you detox from alternative stimulation like dopamine hits from being busy all the time. And my brain was just kind of starved for creativity, but I wasn't in a position where I could just go out and like do all these things to satiate that. And after I started downloading and playing with it, I wrote a book. I did this, I did that. I just started creating all these things that I'd wanted to do. And from that 2022 mark until now, we're kind of in like a third of the way through 2025. We have gone from very basic, like it's called agentic AI, where this agent is creating something for us, talk to text information, to now you can talk and create entire applications or entire videos or so the growth factor, it's like we went from uh, horse and buggy to like spaceship in 3 years. And in the next 5 years, they say that we will not recognize our industry as it currently is. So if you've ever been at like the beginning of something, it's right now. Because if you don't jump on in 5 years, you're going to be like, what happened? You're going to wake up and go, I wish I had paid attention, because it's going to change so much in the next 5 years that I have no doubt that there will be fewer people in our industry with like tactile, functional, like operational, like cutting skills, and there will be more people who are operating from their smart tablet, either robotics or robot implementation, and they're using like a higher level brain scenario to run an entire organization. We're still going to feed people. We're just going to do it in a very, very different way.
Yeah.
And so the skills that we need to get there they're happening right now. You really can't ignore it.
Amazing, Chef. It's a lot of really great content. So we're coming up to close. Anything you want to close out with?
I would just say if you're kind of bored, or maybe you're just looking to freshen up or to reinvigorate your sense of creativity, your ideation skills. These are things that really got all of us into the industry to begin with. We all fell in love with food because it ignited something really amazing inside of us that we wanted to share with the world. And over the years, things that happened to us in life, things that we walk through, that light or that excitement can dim quite a bit. And so for me, the most positive thing that I've gotten out of this in the last 3 years is this has really kind of reinvigorated my sense of being able to contribute, to the world at a higher level. I can exponentially maximize my time, my creativity, my excitement about food, my intuition about food, and my teaching and training skills. I can magnify that by about 100 with knowing just a few simple things about AI. And so I have no doubt that every chef that would come across this or hear it or listen, no matter where they're at, could do the exact same thing. And I think it's a skill that you really need in the future. And it's a lot of fun. I've had more fun in the last 3 years with AI and actually like than I did probably the first 15 years of my career. And it's because I've been able to take so many things at once and get such magnitude for my implementation that it's mind blowing. It really is. It's exciting.
It's awesome, Chef. I agree with you. It's a lot of fun tools. So, and I thank you very much for taking the time for being here with me today. I think the chefs are very invigorated by lots of questions. They're still coming in. So if you haven't answered your question, Chef, we'll share them with Chef Poe afterwards, along with the information presented here, so you can get that information from her, because she is our expert here today. So we appreciate you taking the time today, Chef, for sharing your insights on AI in the culinary industry. And we want to thank all of you. We also want to thank Hormel Food Service as today's foods webinar sponsor. Please be on the lookout for the survey today. You'll receive the next day or so, which will lead to complete the Earn Your CEH units. We hope you'll join us on June 11th for a webinar on plant-based cooking presented in partnership with the Humane World for Animals. Then on June 18th, we'll continue our coverage on June's trend, the Vegetable Renaissance, with Chef Elijah Pulley, CEC, as he presents on how to bring vegetables from the sideline to the forefront. We also invite you to register for the 2025 ACF National Convention, where you can hear more from Chef Tiffany Poe and our other trend experts. This event is filled with tons of educational presentations, networking opportunities, and delicious meals, and we hope to see you there. To learn more about the upcoming webinars in the ACF National Convention, visit acfchefs.org and click on the Events tab. On behalf of the ACF National Office, thank you again to Chef Tiffany Poe for bringing us this amazing opportunity, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. We all hope you have a wonderful day.